Hello, friends. You are locked in to the High Capacity Podcast by Legally Armed America. I'm, of course, your most humble and gracious host and freedom pimp, Paul Glasgow, delivering you a vulgar display of logic and reason within the confines of the Second Amendment. Today, I've got gun news, I've got gun gear news, and I've got a very special guest, Jared Giannis from the Guns and Gadgets YouTube channel. This man is a major player and voice within the Second Amendment community. I'm very happy to have him on this episode of the High Capacity Podcast. And of course, none of this is possible without the support of Armscor Ammunition, Rock Island Armory, Right to Bear Arms Insurance, and Spartan Armor. Guys, we're going to get right into this. I got a lot to go over. Time for some news, guys. Most of you guys probably have already heard, especially if you follow Legally Armed America on YouTube, that the ATF has been, once again, they've been busted. Now, these guys have never been ones to follow the law or adhere to it or really follow rules. But they make their own up, and they're not shy about imposing them and pushing them onto the law-abiding American people. One of the things that they did, that they have been caught with over 900,000 900 million records, 4473 background check records in their possession. Now, they probably did never expect anybody to find out about their de facto registration, but last year they were busted, and I believe it was Ammo Land who busted them, and I think Gun Owners of America was involved in this as well. But they were busted with 54,000 records that they had, I think, had taken optically, like they had digitally scanned these. And because of that, it raised some interest out there. And everyone was like, wait a minute. If you have 54,000 that we just busted you on, how many do you really have altogether? Well, it just came out that they admittedly have, again, almost a billion records that they have in their possession, with 800 and something thousand of those already digitally scanned. Now, why would you ever need to digitally scan something that is already paper? Look, the federal government is very well known for wasting money. So don't tell me it's because they don't have room to store all these records that they shouldn't have in the first place. Because these are the same people that have all of the material that Donald Trump used to start building a wall in Texas, sitting out in fields in Texas, off limits to anybody who wants to use them to complete building the wall. And that's government equipment. That's government material on supposedly government property that no one can touch. So again, the level of waste that the federal government takes part in, please don't ever tell me that it's to save money so we digitally scan these records so that we wouldn't have to physically store them. Come on, guys. We all know better than that. It's a de facto gun registry, and it's something that is not supposed to happen by law, and the ATF and the federal government is doing it. So don't tell me that when we fill out a 4473 that somehow or another it's not a de facto or some kind of a quasi gun registration, because it is in fact that very thing. Now, if the ATF and the FBI's reasons for wanting to be able to have some kind of a gun registration or to hold on to these records like the 900,000 that the ATF had in their possession, they use the reason it's for tracing purposes in case these guns are used in a crime. What difference does that make? The only benefit of having those records on hand would simply be for registration purposes. And we know what happens if you're registering. At some point, you wind up like California, where you have magazine capacity bans. You have limits on how many firearms you can buy. You have waiting limits on how long you have to wait until you can pick up a firearm that you purchased. A plethora of things happen after you have gun registration. Again, case in point, the state of California. A little bit more news that happened this week. Kyle Rittenhouse's rifle will be destroyed. This is a story I picked up off of Ammo Land. Weird situation. Kyle had already mentioned that he had no intention of keeping the rifle and I think any of his possessions that were used whenever he defended himself and shot these individuals in Kenosha County. However, the I guess it's one of these, like, we got to get a small little victory out of this somehow from the wackos on the left, and of course that goofy assistant district attorney Binger in Kenosha County. Remember, he's the little goofball that was aiming the AR-15 at everybody in the jury. Complete wacko with zero muzzle knowledge and gun safety knowledge whatsoever. Well, I guess he had to get his. You know, he clearly was anti-gun, but now he's got his victory that he can go to cocktail parties and whatever his next thing is, his next venture, because clearly, as miserably as he failed in prosecuting Kyle Rittenhouse, there ain't going to be a job for him anywhere else. So this man's looking for another career elsewhere. So clearly this is one of those feathers in his cap that he is going to use to say, look what I did. I took an AR-15 off the street, even though it was used in a lawful defense of an American on the streets of America. But nevertheless, they got their little win. They're going to destroy the AR-15. I don't know, man. I don't have any opinion on that other than the fact that that's not right. That shouldn't be allowed. My guess is the rifle was legally Dominic Black. That's the young man who actually purchased the firearm and gave it to Kyle Rittenhouse. So technically it wasn't Kyle's to do anything with anyway. Well, it was a gift, I guess, so that was legal. But the rightful owner, in terms of the 4473 and the receipt for the firearm, was Dominic Black. Dominic Black had a plea deal, since he was the one who had sold Rittenhouse the firearm, which again, or gave it to him rather. That was perfectly legal, but he had some other issues of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. That's hard to say. So he did a plea deal, and he's going to pay $2,000. And my guess is he probably made that plea deal and said, look, I don't need the firearm. I got, bigger things to worry about. He's probably more worried about this wacko Binger throwing some additional charges at him because he wouldn't let him have his little victory of destroying the AR-15 that Rittenhouse used. He probably just said, heck with it, just keep the thing. I'm not even going to make a big mess of it. But he could have. Had he not had those additional charges and was not trying to plead down on a lesser charge, he probably could have made a bigger deal out of it and said, no, you're not destroying this firearm. I'm going to take possession of that. So that's one of the things that, I guess you got bigger hills that you want to die on, and that's certainly not one, and I understand that. One of the other things that I picked up off of Ammo Land was Hunter Biden is no longer going to be investigated for his horribly misthought out acts of tossing a firearm away, and not to mention lying about his drug abuse and his substance abuse on his 4473 when he purchased his firearm. The ATF has asked a judge to order the Hunter Biden gun inquiry to be closed. They're citing, and again, this is from Ammo Land, the gentleman that is working on this. Let me get his name real quick for credit because he needs to have that. David Codrea, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And I know that John Crump actually was involved in this early last year, I believe it was as well. They did a FOIA request, I believe it was, and I'm glancing through this, but let's see, it was, I guess, later determined that these guys were not media, so they denied the FOIA request. We all know that that's not the reason. We all know that it's because of Hunter Biden, and the ATF actually argued in this case that Hunter, or the information surrounding this, was protected by Freedom of Information Act exemptions because Hunter is very popular. Obviously, he's the president's son. And certainly, if this got out, a lot of stuff would happen. If you guys don't know what happened, Hunter Biden, probably in a drunken stupor or in a crack-infused rage, got mad at his girlfriend, which was the widow of his dead brother, who he was sleeping with at the time. They got in a big argument, and apparently she feared for her life and her kids' safety and life. So you can categorize it however you want. She stole the pistol out of Hunter Biden's gun lock safe, whatever, inside his vehicle. Stole the gun, wrapped it up in a paper bag or something like that, and threw it in a trash can that was full, so it landed on top of it right in front of a marketplace there in the Delaware area. Yeah, responsible adult right there. That's the president's son's ex-girlfriend. So yeah, that alone is bad enough because she should not have been able to take that gun, take possession of that gun. They want to talk about universal background checks, and clearly that would not have made a difference because had they had a universal background check, she still didn't properly transfer that weapon into her own name, and she wouldn't have. Because again, if she truly feared for her life or her children's life, that was a non-issue to her. She was trying to just make the situation safer. And it's sad whenever you have to make a situation safer for yourself and your children by removing a gun from the presence and the access of a crackhead drug addict who lied on a 4473. But nevertheless, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. They are not going to have any charges put on anybody in this case. In fact, the ATF has asked that it be closed. That's kind of weird how that happens, isn't it? The man in charge now has asked people to have this closed, which, I mean, who knows? Joe Biden, in the state of mind that he actually is, I doubt that he's the one that asked. It's his handlers who asked for this. So nevertheless, we will try to keep you guys up to date on some of the things going on in news as often as we can. You guys know that the CRS firearms issue last week in terms of some of the weird things that happened. We're going to have a little bit more on that story probably next week or the week after, but I did want to let you guys know that we are not ignoring the story. We just want to get more facts and more details on it before we actually speak on it. So just know that I am working on that right now. It does seem like we're going to have some kind of an official ruling on pistol braces later in August of this year. It's pretty sad how this has evolved with the amount of responses and feedback from the general public during the comment period for the ATF, and they still seem to be ignoring that and are going to move on with how they want to with pistol braces. So anyway, guys, that's kind of it in a nutshell for news this week. I will try to post links whenever I can in the description of the podcast so that you guys can go read these articles on your own. A big thanks to AmmoLand for providing us a lot of the information that they do. That's a good source for me. I use them a lot. And also a massive thanks to Rock Island Armory and Armscor Ammunition. These guys are the reason why we can do some of the things that we do in the High Capacity Podcast, including the news, and be able to take the time out to pass that on to you guys. I've been a big fan for a long time. You guys know my relationship with Rock Island Armory and Armscor. They are my ammunition sponsor. I will use no other ammunition besides Armscor ammunition. Just a big fan of theirs. I sought them out years ago to be my ammunition supplier, and very, very happy at how that whole thing has evolved. I mean, they're family to me, and I think I'm family to them. So just really happy that they're involved in the High Capacity Podcast, not to mention the Rock Island Armory. Pistols and firearms and whatnot. These guys make impeccable equipment, everything from their shotguns that they import to their 1911s, biggest 1911 manufacturer in the world, and clearly one of the most affordable, well-running 1911s that you're going to find on the market. Again, that's Rock Island Armory and, of course, Armscor Ammunition. Big shout-out to those guys. Lots of love for them. All right, folks, this is the moment I've been waiting for. What a way to kick off the High Capacity Podcast, and with a true, in my opinion, celebrity in the circles that we run in the Second Amendment community. This guy is tip of the spear when it comes to news, a great guy, a strong voice in the Second Amendment community. You know him as Jared Giannis with the Guns and Gadgets YouTube channel. Hey, Jared.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. I'm humbled with the opportunity.
No. I'm actually humbled that you would agree to be on the very first episode of the High Capacity Podcast. So you're doing more for me than I feel like I'm doing for you. So thank you very much for that. I want to get right into it. I want to first explain to the audience a little bit about what you do, and then I want to turn it over to you and let you kind of elaborate a little bit more on that. Obviously, Jared, you run the YouTube channel, and I certainly don't mean to simplify anything when I say that, because I know that sounds like it's a little simpler than what it is, but you run the YouTube channel Guns and Gadgets. That is your baby. At last look a minute ago, you had 473,000 subscribers, which kudos to that. That's massive. I mean, what a reach that is. And over 2,000 videos that you had uploaded, which we'll talk more about that later, about that number of videos, because that's impressive. Right off the bat, if I were to describe your channel to the listeners and your content in a couple of paragraphs, what would that be? And I'm going to let you do that.
Sure. Thanks for the intro. So what I hope my channel is to everybody out there who has a vested interest in our right to keep and bear arms, whether they're a hunter, somebody who carries a gun for self-defense, or what have you, or even if they're not a gun owner, but somebody who values our rights that are guaranteed to us under our United States Constitution given to us by our Creator. What I hope to do with my channel is to be a one-stop shop where somebody can go and see what's going on in the country as far as a victory for the Second Amendment, whether it's a pro-gun bill or a win at the federal level in a court system or what have you, or also the attacks that we constantly have where people, in power in legislatures, whether state or federal, are looking to erode our right to keep and bear arms. So what I try to do is to let people know within a couple minutes what's going on, how it can affect them, if it's in their state, how to take action on it. I'll often give them links where they can find out who their legislators are and tell them just how easy it is to talk to them, or give them a link to where a federal group, a massive gun group has already done the hard leg work, and just ask them to be a part of the movement. We the people are much more powerful than we understand, and everybody can play a ginormous role in not just stopping the attack on our rights, but taking some of our rights back that have been eroded over time. So that's what I try to do on my channel, is to make it as easy as possible. I try to go over bills and simplify them so the average person can understand the legalese that is often hidden inside these bills, and try to drive them to take action on it.
You bring up a really good point as far as the legalese, and I'm looking at a lot of your videos online. I will share the link to your YouTube page so people can go out there and subscribe to it. But you and I had a conversation earlier about the legalese, and I think that's one of the things that social media, more specifically YouTube, has done to really help the average person out there. And I don't mean this from an intelligence level. I mean from an involvement level. The average person over the years really was turned off by legal speak and anything that you read. If you read a bill out loud, it sounded like a bunch of gobbledygook. It's just not something that anybody wanted to waste their time with. Didn't make a whole lot of sense. And, politicians over the years have perfected that art of creating kind of a different language to where they can bury things into bills. And the average everyday guy who doesn't do that for a living, or maybe isn't an attorney or doesn't work in contracts, doesn't follow that. And you do a fabulous job of going in there and actually, I guess I'm going to say, decoding the bills and saying what they're really trying to say. How did you perfect that art and get to this point where you could do that?
Well, the big part of my career for 24 years, I was in law enforcement in a couple different states, including Louisiana. And I've been through 3 police academies where we were force-fed old English law, to read old law, to read the founding documents, to read the state constitution and understand bills or court cases that still have standing in law in each state. So that was part of it. My college degree is in criminal justice, same deal, digging into to law and try to understand what bills mean and how a bill is actually carried out from the beginning till the end, where it reaches a governor or a president's desk. And politics, specifically, bills and stuff like that, it's one of I call it the trifecta that nobody wants to talk about. It's always politics, religion, or money. You don't talk about it because it's guaranteed to anger somebody, because not everybody has the same point of view on everything in life, which is the way it's supposed to be. So because of that, a lot of people are turned off by it, and if it's not something that they really, really want to know about, then they tend not to learn more about it. It's not just politics, that's everything in life. And I believe that our Second Amendment rights are in the situation we're in currently because a lot of people have said, that really doesn't bother me personally, so I really don't, it doesn't really bother me because it doesn't affect me on an individual level. And we're getting to a point now where, what happens to our neighbor, if we don't help stand for our neighbor, it's going to happen to us. And if we didn't stand for others, then there's going to be nobody to stand with us as well. And that's the whole thing. We are a team. We the people actually mean something. And I strive to get people to realize that. And I think that's been a driving force of my channel. I think people realize that when whether I'm speaking in front of a crowd or on the channel, I have no filter. It's just point blank. I'm not trying to fluff anything. I'm not trying to make it sound worse than it is, but I need people to understand exactly what it says and how they can address it in the shortest amount of time so that I don't lose their attention. And I think that YouTube has helped with that endeavor, and I just hope more and more people get involved, and it looks like it's working.
No, it definitely is. I mean, obviously, your channel growth is proof that it's working. I think that the analogy of putting your head in the sand is where a lot of people were for many, many years. And unfortunately, like what you mentioned about, thinking that laws may not apply or affect you, we can ignore the fact that things are going on all we want to outside of our own home or whatever, but it doesn't mean that they're not going on. And I think that you do a good job of letting people know that all these things are happening. In fact, again, looking at your YouTube channel, I noticed your first two playlists that I come upon is breaking news updates. Let's see, where was the other two that I looked at? Okay, federal bills to watch, and then state level attacks on the Second Amendment. I like the way you broke up those playlists because, let's say for a guy like me, it gives me an opportunity to take a look at the federal bills to watch. That's the first place I'm probably going to go if I'm a new viewer of yours. But I'm probably going to scan through those state level attacks on the Second Amendment because now, I mean, a person like myself, I understand that these state level attacks, they start somewhere. None of these bills, at one point, one bill was the original bill. But all the bills in all other 50 states that get resurrected or brought up or introduced, it's the same exact verbiage. So when one bill that is an anti-gun bill gets introduced in a state like California, there's a very good chance we're going to see a version of it down where I am in Louisiana at some point and with the exact same wording in it. So I think it's a good idea that people can go in there and look at the way you've separated this into your playlist and get a general idea of what's kind of making its way across the country that may affect you one day. And I think you've done a really good job at separating that.
Thank you, man. You said it perfectly, because each individual state is a testing ground, and if it goes unchecked, it's a proving ground for bills that, those who would like to have less firearms for whatever their end game is, and there's several of them. But if a bill passes into law, say here in Massachusetts, then they'll try it in California. If it passes there, it'll go to New York, and it'll trickle its way through the quote-unquote anti-gun states, and then it becomes a federal bill. And it's been happening not just on the Second Amendment side, but on all of our rights that are under attack.
That's right.
This is how it works, and you might not be a gun guy or gal, and I totally understand that. But what they're doing specifically to the Second Amendment, you've seen in the last 2 years, they're doing it for the First Amendment. We went through a period of time in this country where you couldn't gather with your peers, you couldn't approach your government for redress, you couldn't go and worship in your church or your synagogue or whatever. Those are direct violations to our rights that people weren't aware of until it was too late. And that's what I try to do with my channel specifically for the Second Amendment, is to make everybody aware so that we're not stuck behind the 8 ball and then it's too late.
Well, I don't mind mentioning that I'm one of the people that gets educated from your channel, and I've mentioned this to you before. In the past, I would go to, and I still have my go-tos like Ammo Land and guys like that that are friends of mine that are really good about getting news out quickly. But you have a knack for getting the news out extremely fast that I've kind of sidestepped a lot of the different places that I've gone to get content to build videos. And, I want to be, timely in getting videos out, especially to the folks that follow me. And I use your channel as that resource now. It may not be my only resource, but you're so quick on the draw to get a lot of these videos out and a lot of these hot topics that really we need to know about. It's not just entertainment. And I've told you this before, I don't use your channel for entertainment. I use it for information. And that's a big deal. It's a big difference. I mean, there's a whole lot more value in a place I can go to get educated and get information I need to put my own videos or whatever out than it is to just go somewhere and watch somebody walking on a bunch of egg crates and falling down and busting their butt. I mean, that's entertainment. So, I mean, you bring value to the channel, and I have to ask you this, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but the timeliness of your videos. How are you able, and I don't want to know your secrets like your sources or whatever, but how are you able to get the information and disseminate it so fast like you do now?
Well, like you said, a big part of it is the amount of contacts I've been able to secure through, a 24-year career in law enforcement in a couple different states, and to know people who've moved on into politics and or became attorneys and sit at some pretty high levels. So that's a great help. But as far as getting information out fast, to be honest with you, the credit goes to my wife. We have 4 autistic children, so it can be a very, very daunting task just to take care of the household on a daily basis. And my wife has always been, a huge backer in everything I do in my life, not just in my career. And when she saw the channel and the positive effect it started to have early on, if I tell her, honey, I got to go to the studio, it's not a question. She'll do everything she needs to do to lock down the home and take care of the kids, and allows me to get whatever time is needed to get a video out. Sometimes it's quick, a live thing if I don't have time to edit anything. Sometimes I'm shooting in my car. Sometimes I'm out on the back steps. And sometimes, most of the time, I have a chance to get to my studio and make it look a little professional. But credit goes to my wife as far as getting things out fast, because literally without her, this channel probably is 1/10 of what it's become.
Oh, you guys definitely make a good team. She clearly is doing a good job, and God bless her for that. I will say that on your delivery on some of your videos, you mentioned just now about getting to the studio. I personally, I've got no problem with sometimes your quick videos that you got to put out if you're, on the back side of your house. I remember one of the first videos I ever saw, I think, of yours was you were in your backyard or something. I think your home was your backdrop or something, and I was like, that's cool. I mean, to me that showed more of a concern of getting the information out as quickly as possible, rather than making sure that it was all polished and nice and neat, for delivery purposes.
Yeah, that's what it's all about for me, because you can ask anybody, my wife included. I'm far from polished, so I just want to get the information out as fast as possible.
Real curious, your thoughts today in the current climate of the Second Amendment. Obviously, like you mentioned earlier, we've got other attacks on our, all of our constitutional rights are getting popped at especially over the last 2 years, at every turn. But concerning the Second Amendment specifically, what are some pressing issues that you see, maybe some fights that we're going to have in 2022, and some things that maybe, and this is what always scares me, the things that might be flying under the radar that we need to know about and we need to be talking about?
Well, typically, like every time we have a Congress that is Democrat controlled, we get the similar bills that are submitted every session where that's the case. And we have that stuff now. We have this, the one gun a month type bill. We have the ammo tax type bills going around. We have gun tax bills. There's all kinds of restrictions that are submitted, and everybody gets to see what they are, and it's out in front of your face, so you can prepare for it. And luckily, a lot of that hasn't been able to pass this Senate. So most of the stuff legislatively is not going to have any type of footing or grounding. But the big issue here is the current administration knows that it can't get anything done through Congress. So they have moved, specifically the Second Amendment, they've moved to the administrative side. So for instance, Merrick Garland is now the Attorney General of the United States. He's no friend of the Second Amendment. He has told his Department of Justice, including the ATF, to do a lot of things that they cannot do constitutionally. But because it's an administrative process, they get away with it until it's challenged in court. Right now, the ATF is doing a lot of things that we might have never even dreamed was a possibility as a gun owner. Gun Owners of America just broke information that they have almost 1 billion firearms transactions recorded, and 90% of them are digital, which makes it a searchable database. That's a gun registry, which is forbidden by federal law, yet they're doing it, and they have been doing it since the 30s. So that's a major issue, and there's a lawsuit, to further that. But they're also trying to change things again with these administrative rules, because the ATF is an unelected group of bureaucrats. They don't have the ability or the power to make law, so they try to just do the death by 1,000 cuts and just change some rules here and there. So they're coming after things like 80% frames and receivers, things that have been a legal thing. You could build your own gun since before this country was founded and ratified. Before the Constitution was a thing, when it was the colonial days, and even before, people built their own firearms to use for their own self-defense, whether it was property or the person. And now that is under attack. So that's one big thing. They're going after inanimate objects like bump stocks, triggers that will force a reset. And I don't want to get too far into the scientific side behind that, but they're calling these things machine guns, and they're absolutely not a machine gun. Now we have new rules coming out for firearms that have pistol braces on them. The pistol brace allows people with disabilities or strength issues or maybe missing limbs, where they can shoot these firearms like AR-15s and AK-47s and the like and not be held back or not lose their Second Amendment simply because they don't have the ability to hold up or, just the sheer weight of the full-size firearm.
Mm-hmm.
But now the ATF is going to say, come in August, that those are items that should be regulated under the National Firearms Act, the NFA, where they want everybody to pay a $200 tax stamp for the privilege of holding and owning something that they've had forever that's been totally legal.
That you bought
so it's
legally.
a lot of 100%. You've had it for years, and then overnight they're going to try to make it a felony to own. And if you don't pay them for the ability to own it, then you're a felon. That's called an ex post facto law. And they're doing these left and right. I could keep going all day with things the ATF has done or plans to do. But the big thing is we need to hold our politicians accountable. And, you're going to see lawsuits come forward, and we need to back those groups that are suing these major departments so that we can, kind of slap them back to reality a little.
You mentioned, Jared, the bureaucracy or the bureaucratic side of this, where the politicians realize they can't legislate and put any new laws into effect. Number one, they may not pass. Number two, it would certainly, there's already going to be a bloodbath most likely in November at the election, at the polling booths. They would just make it worse by trying to push anything really anti-gun through. But with the bureaucratic approach to a lot of this, in other words, using the ATF to do a lot of these things, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and you just touched on a really important point. People are fed up, and I know you see it in your comment section. I see it in my comment section on YouTube. People are fed up with the phone calls, with the emails, calling people or telling a politician this or that. They feel like they've got no recourse. They feel like no one's listening to them. A perfect example would be the comment period that we recently had with the ATF. And again, it's no favor that the ATF did that. By federal law, they have to have a comment period where the general public gets to discuss something before it's actually legislated or put into law, or a rule, I should say. But people are getting fed up, and somebody brought that up to me the other day. They were like, look, what we had all these tens and hundreds of thousands, I think it was tens of thousands of comments, and many of them were negative comments towards the ATF on a lot of the issues that you're talking about. I forget which one I'm speaking about specifically here, but now they go ahead and put this email out or this notice out last week that come August, like you said, all these items, and I think it was specifically the arm braces, the stabilizing braces, that now they're going to make you pay a tax stamp for that. And people look at that and they're like, well, man, we had overwhelming support in favor of not banning these things. They were in common use, if you'll remember the Heller decision. So how could they do this? And people are just throwing their hands up in the air and I'm seeing this. I mean, I'm literally seeing this now, that people are saying, okay, you're asking me to call and send an email or doing a text alert or whatever. Why am I going to waste my time doing it now? Because it's never worked before. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, I know somebody has to be wronged before something can go to court. By them bureaucratically putting all these new rules into place, are a whole bunch of people going to get wronged and there's a class action lawsuit, or what is that next step in that, and specifically is talking about stabilizing braces?
Well, one thing to point out is that, we have had victories using this comment period in the past. And specifically the one you're talking about, the pistol brace issue, at the last minute, groups such as Everytown for Gun Safety and Moms Demand Action and the like, they drove their grassroots to make a ton of comments in favor of these rules. So those go into the factoring as well. Plus, it's a bureaucratic attempt to follow Joe Biden's directive. So they're going to do what they're told. Unfortunately, they don't take their oath serious. They're going to take their marching orders and push. They can keep pushing the envelope. But we have had victories in this process in the past. If you remember, a couple of years ago under the Obama administration, they tried to ban green tip ammo because they were saying that it was armor penetrating. And for people who know about ammunition, it is not an armor piercing round. Mm-hmm. And they did the same exact process. Like you said, it's required by law, and we won. They were inundated with comments, and they pulled the proposed rule back. In these two proposed rules that we're talking about, specifically the pistol braces and the redefining of a frame or receiver, they gave estimates of how many comments that they expected to get through this process, and we fell way short of those goals established by the ATF. So, and they do that on purpose because they're saying, look, we're expecting however many, 1.2 million comments for this. if we got 200,000, yeah, we think that's a lot. But when they're saying we should get at least 1.2 million, it doesn't look like that many.
Right.
And they use that to their advantage, saying, look, there aren't that many people that care about this. We only got, 1/10 of what we were expecting. So maybe that this rule is something that people are for. And I get the point where people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. You're frustrated. We all are. But they count on that. They count on that frustration. They count on people being disenfranchised because we're apt to do less, and which gives them more of the playing field. They take up more of the battlefield with their attempts, and that's how they can push stuff through. We have to stay vigilant. We're not going to win every battle, but at the same time, if we don't fight, we're not going to win any battles, and we'll lose all of them. So that's what I try to get people to understand. We are more powerful. We the people. There are more gun owners than people who make these comments. We just need everybody involved. We can't just have the same 2 to 3% of people doing everything all the time. It has to be a team, and we need to get the team involved.
And you're right. If they're setting that, if they're making the rules, knowing that if they frustrate people enough that they'll just stop, speaking out or whatever, then we're kind of falling into their trap. And I guess we have to make sure that we don't get to that point where we just lose any confidence and say, okay, we're just not going to do this anymore, because then they've kind of won, because they've predicted us to go into that area anyway, and now we wind up there and we look like the fools and they win.
100%.
I want to switch gears real quick on a more positive note. Last year, I was fortunate enough, that's whenever I met you at the Gundys over in Uvalde, Texas. Uvalde is a quick little 5.5 hour drive for me, so I went over there and had a great time at the Gundys. This isn't a commercial for the Gundys, by the way, but I did have a good time over there. You actually won the Breakout Creator of the Year award in the Second Amendment community. And, as the Gundys grow, so does the following, so do the people that are involved in it. And I felt like last year it had grown into a pretty legitimate organization. And with you winning that Breakout Creator, it was kind of a big deal. This year, you're nominated for Voice of the 2A. That is a big deal. And, of course, it doesn't help that there's 8,000 other people running, so it kind of waters it down a little bit. But I mean, personally, I've looked at all of them, and I recognize a lot of them. I do think you're still the guy who's going to win it. I'm crossing my fingers that you are, because I've made a commitment that if you win, and there's no pressure, but if you win and if you commit your winnings that you get as the winner, back to one of the autism foundations like you did last year, that we at Legally Armed America are going to match that contribution. So I actually try to encourage my viewers to vote for you. I feel like that it's definitely a winnable thing for you. Again, I feel like this is just a different type of category, but you're more pertinent in the Voice of the 2A, I think, than Breakout Creator. So best of luck on that. I know voting is closed, so we're not sending anybody to vote, but I assume I will see you down there in Uvalde, Texas. You'll be making that trip back down there in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely be there. And it's funny you brought this up, because like 2 minutes before we started this call, I got a package in the mail, and the Gundy has arrived for Breakout Creator of the Year last year. So the big shout out to Forge Relations and the Gundys. Thank you. It was humbling to be a part of the process, humbling to be nominated, and to have the people, the viewers who watch our content, to have them vote enough that I was blessed enough to win. I mean, it left me speechless. It's nothing I expect. It's nothing I strive for, to be noticed or to be set apart. But it's very, very humbling. And I look forward to being there in 2 weeks and hanging out with you again.
Well, good. Well, I mean, you definitely are a good ambassador for the Second Amendment. I'm not saying that to patronize you at all. We've had offline conversations. You do a really good job, and I would definitely encourage everyone who has not already subscribed to you and to go to Guns and Gadgets on YouTube, and I'm looking at your page right now. Make sure you click the notification bell. I'm looking at it right now, and guess what? My notification bell is not selected again, and mine was before. How about that? I mean, what's the what's the odds of YouTube doing that, right?
Yeah, no, they like to do that a lot on the pro freedom channels. A lot of people are unsubscribed without them knowing that the bell, like you said, the notification bell gets unclicked. It's just it's a game that they play, but they're not going to stop the truth, at least from this channel, getting out. And I absolutely will, to address what you said earlier, I absolutely will be donating to the Doug Flutie Foundation for Autism again, whether or not I win. So I'm going to do everything I can to help out that group because they do amazing work.
Well, that's good. Well, congratulations on the win last year, and congratulations on your success, Jared. You do a really good job. And again, I'll never. I consider myself very similar to the way that you conduct yourself. That I don't like to BS people, and you really are. I consider the tip of the spear in what we try to do as far as getting information out there. And I commend you on what you've done, your level of growth you've done, and for kids with autism, you're able to balance that too. I don't mind telling you that you are one of the people that I will remind myself about anytime. I have an autistic son as well. And you're one of the people that whenever you're having a tough day, your kid's having a tough day, and you're like, man, this is a lot. For my entire life, I've always said the way I motivate myself is I don't care how bad I think I have it. There's always somebody that has it much worse than me. And I don't mean to say that you're my guy, but you kind of are. Whenever I'm having a tough day, I'm like, man, how does somebody like Jared do this, 4 times? That's tough. So the fact that you're able to do that, you're still upbeat, positive, which I commend you for that as well. A lot to be said for that, Jared. I think that says a lot about your character, and I really appreciate everything you do for the Second Amendment community.
Thank you, brother. It's very humbling, and it means a lot. Thank you so much.
Okay, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Be safe.
What a good dude, right? Yeah, Jared is the real deal, man. Let me tell you, Guns and Gadgets, aside from being out in front of everything every time there's news, breaking Second Amendment related news out there, he's just a good person. I can tell you that he's not only great at YouTube, he's not only a great spokesman for the Second Amendment, he's a great dad as well, and just a good person. And to me, somebody being a good father is a great reflection on their own personality. So a lot of respect for that guy. Guys, the anti-gun movement is always real rapid about trying to steal different types of names and nomenclature and things like that might make somebody think that they're actually doing something positive with their efforts, when in reality they're just trying to restrict the Second Amendment, like stealing the phrase gun safety. However, we in the pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun community, we're the ones doing the real work on the ground, on the street, at that grassroots level, trying to promote safety amongst our folks, because we know that we have a huge responsibility whenever we are carrying a firearm, teaching our young people how to use firearms and whatnot. One thing I do want to point out, we are going to do regularly on this podcast is push different forms of safety tips and things like that. And one of the things that I wanted to point out this week is that we are right after the first of the year, of course, right after Christmas time. In many cases, a lot of homes have new firearms in them, different types of ammo that might be gotten, a little bit of excitement to get out to the range. It's not too hot. Of course, I'm in South Louisiana, so there are times of the year it's too hot to get out to the range. I know that sounds like somebody saying they're too drunk to go fishing, but it does happen in South Louisiana and other parts of the country. So I know people are eager to get out to the range, use those new firearms, and hopefully teach other people. We just need to make sure that if there's a new firearm in the house, that we do approach things with the ultimate safety, realizing that we have that major responsibility to not only protect ourselves from people outside that might be seeking to do us harm, but also from inside the home to make sure that a child that might be curious, that has not been introduced to firearms the right way or yet, doesn't get overly curious and go hunting and searching for that firearm and do something unfortunately safety and tragic. Or unsafe and tragic. So I just want to point that out. I'll be posting some things, descriptions and whatnot in our podcast description. That's going to link you back to some gun safety tips in many cases that I'm speaking about on the podcast. So just be on the lookout for those. Guys, speaking of protection, one thing that I really want to push, there's a company on the market out there right now that I'm sure you guys have heard about, many other companies like them, and it's for firearms insurance. This company is called Right to Bear. Right to Bear is an insurance company. Now, this is a true, real insurance company that they offer the top levels that you're maybe already used to that some other companies might be offering. You got to be careful whenever you're selecting these different types of firearm insurance companies, because first of all, some states may or may not actually recognize them. Of course, the company will take your money, but the state might not actually recognize them as being a company that, or an insurance company that you can actually use in the event that you do have some kind of a tragic setting or something that takes place involving a firearm. You want to be real careful with that. Right to Bear Insurance actually is a legitimate company. These guys are backed by an A-rated insurance carrier. They have plans that include civil defense, criminal defense, bail bond reimbursement, compensation in court, accidental discharge, spousal coverage. There's some other add-ons that you can put on there. 24/7 hotline, self-defense training videos. Currently, they have 4 different plans. They range from $10.95 a month for the bronze plan, and the platinum plan is $50.95 a month. Of course, you're getting all the bells and whistles with the platinum plan. That's that civil, criminal defense liability coverage of up to $2 million, multi-state coverage, psychological support, expert witness coverage, all kinds of things like that. But again, you do have an entry-level plan that you can certainly sign up for today at $10.95 a month. We will also provide a link in the description for you guys to go to Right to Bear Insurance. Take a look at the plan. Compare them to other plans. You owe it to yourself to do that. I'll never steer you guys wrong. If you want to find out what the best plan out there is, I encourage you guys to make those comparisons. And I think you'll wind up right back here at Right to Bear, and that's probably who you're going to go with. So check it out. Right to Bear. The best place to find them right now is protectwithbear.com. Again, protectwithbear.com. That's where you're going to find them. Check them out. Guys, something just popped up real quick on the airways here, and I just wanted to insert that here into the High Capacity Podcast. I'm watching Joe Biden sitting here talking about guns and whatnot in New York City. Now, this man goes to New York City and says that he wants other communities to adopt the same things that are happening in New York City when New York City has record crime. They've got increases of 90% up to 300% in different types of violent crime and whatnot. But what really perplexed me is how Joe Biden inadvertently makes the case for us pro-Second Amendment people. Listen to this little clip right here.
As the mayor said, as he pointed out, guns that are used to kill people in New York City, they aren't made in New York City. They aren't sold in New York City. They are sold in other places.
Did Joe Biden just make our case for us? Did Joe Biden just explain in his own stupid way that criminals are the ones committing the crimes? He's sitting here saying that they need to pass new laws because for some reason these guns were not made or sold in New York City. Well, duh. We know this. That's what we've been trying to say all along. These guns are not legally finding their way into these high-ridden crime areas. All of these areas are run by Democrat mayors. They all have extremely heavy-handed gun control laws in them. The guns, yes, Joe, you're right. The guns were not made or sold there. The criminals stole them and brought them there illegally. The next gun law you pass will have zero effect on these very same people. Friends, one of the coolest things that I saw at SHOT Show this past year, 2022 SHOT Show at Las Vegas, was by far the Palmetto State Armory 5.7. That's right. It's a 5.7 by 28, the same round that we're used to and seen in the FN 5.7, and Ruger actually came out with their own version of it. Now, these pistols by Ruger and FN were definitely north of the $1,000 mark. The cool thing about the Palmetto State Armory, when I don't know how they're doing this thing is going to be between $499 and $599. Now, the difference in prices are probably going to be because you're going to have optics cut on some, you're going to have threaded barrels on others, but just to set the record straight, you're going to be able to get one for as low as $499. Guys, this is not a paid advertisement. This is simply me going, wow, that's a pretty cool deal. This thing's going to have all kind of cool stuff that any other 5.7 that you shoot for at least half the price. So definitely keep your eyes out. That's probably one of the coolest things that I saw at the 2022 SHOT Show. So you'll want to keep an eye out. When's it going to be available? Man, they say 60 days after SHOT Show. My guess is you're going to see it March, April-ish. Remember, we got supply chain issues across the entire world right now, and it's certainly affecting the firearms industry. So look for the Palmetto State Armory 5.7 somewhere in the springtime, and I think you're going to be happy when you get your hands on it. Folks, we got a lot of pretty cool stuff for the High Capacity Podcast going on. One thing that I wanted to share with you guys, and I hope this doesn't get me in any kind of trouble because I hope to have a little bit of fun with it. We have a phone number to the High Capacity Podcast. That's right, a phone number. You can text me, you can leave me a positive voicemail, or you can leave me a really bad voicemail. I'm sure some of those anti-gun wackos are going to leave me some really juicy voicemails. The number that you can reach us, text or phone call, is 202-869-2527. Again, that number is 202-869-2527. Again, guys, you can text that number. There's no charge for anything. It's just like any other phone number. You can either text that number or you can call that number. Now, I'm likely not going to answer that phone because it is an indirect phone that is not my own personal phone that I carry with me. However, you can leave me a voicemail, and I do plan on playing some voicemails back on the High Capacity Podcast on future episodes. So that's going to be pretty much fun. Obviously, I'll be reading some texts as well. So that's going to be a real blast. Guys, if you do not already have my book, like I've mentioned to many people before, you can go to howtomakeamonster.com. Again, howtomakeamonster.com, and you're going to find my book, How to Make a Monster, right there. You can get it on Amazon or Kindle as well. Guys, I also want to mention one more thing, that you can also go to Gun Owners of America. I'm going to have a link in the description of this podcast and every podcast where you're going to have a bit of a discount. In other words, let's say your normal standard membership is $25 for a year. You're going to get a $20 membership if you want to sign up for the first time. So you're going to save $5 on your first year's membership at Gun Owners of America. I will provide all the links that I speak about on the High Capacity Podcast. I will be including in the description of that particular podcast below. And if it's relevant links that are going to stretch across all of the podcasts, I'll probably have that in the actual description of the main podcast bio, wherever you happen to be, watching, wherever you happen to be listening to the High Capacity Podcast from. So definitely want you guys to check that out. If you have ideas for anything that we're going to be doing that you would like to see us do going forward with the High Capacity Podcast, by all means, guys, simply send me that text. Again, that number is 202-869-2527, or leave me a voicemail, or guess what? You can still do it the old way. You can still email me, paul@legallyarmedamerica.com, paul@legallyarmedamerica.com. Guys, unless it happens to slip into my spam folder, I respond to almost every single email. Obviously, if it's a dirty email or something like that, or spam or bot generated or something, I'm not going to. But I do want to get feedback from you guys. I want to know what you'd rather do. I want to know what you think doesn't work for the High Capacity Podcast. Because guys, guess what? We're not going anywhere. We're here to stay. We're going to have several of these every single week. We're going to drop a new High Capacity Podcast. And more than likely, we're going to move this probably by the summertime, maybe early spring, to twice a week, and then who knows from there. But definitely right now we'll be dropping a new episode every single Monday. I'm actually going to have this uploaded late Sunday night, so that whenever you wake up in the morning, the podcast will be there ready for you. I want to extend a sincere thank you to all the truck drivers and all the commuters who have reached out to me. I kind of discovered the fact that there was a little bit of an audience that wanted to listen to what we were saying. Whenever I put my book out, a lot of people were like, man, where's the audio book? Which, by the way, I am still working on. And I was like, man, people really drive and listen to this stuff. And of course, a lot of people really started blowing me up about a podcast. So I'm happy to finally get some consistency out there to put this podcast out. And of course, guys, it's not possible without the likes of Armscor Ammunition, Rock Island Armory, Spartan Armor, and of course, Right to Bear Insurance, where you can get some really good coverage for your own self, whether you're a concealed carrier or not. You're going to want to check into that type of insurance. I will be doing a video coming up very soon comparing the different types of available insurance out there in the firearms community. You'll want to stay tuned for that. So you definitely want to go to my YouTube channel, Legally Armed America. Just search for Legally Armed America on YouTube, and it's going to pop up one of your first things that you're looking for out there. Also, don't ever forget to go to legallyarmedamerica.com, legallyarmedamerica.com, where I will be posting some deals, some specials, some ways for you guys to save money on products, gear, and whatnot throughout the firearms community. I'm always seeking out a deal that I can pass on to you guys so you can have a little bit of savings out there, because let's face it, nothing is cheap these days. And if I can give you guys some savings, I'd certainly like to push that on down the pipe so you guys can take a look at it and possibly save some money while also having a good time and protecting your family in the meantime. Once again, folks, thank you so much for joining me Paul Glasgow from Legally Armed America with the High Capacity Podcast. We will see you guys next Monday. And remember, never be afraid to be the safest person in the room and the deadliest.